Welcome to this explainer. Okay, so have you ever just hit retweet without really giving it a second thought? I mean, we all do it, right? Well, today we are looking at a completely fascinating collision between that exact microscopic digital action and a massive real-world legal consequence. We're diving into a case that sits right at the intersection of modern complex systems theory and traditional judicial logic. It's really a story about how we define cause and effect in the digital age, and honestly, it's going to challenge everything you think you know about influence on the internet. So, here is the central question we are posing today. Can a single retweet from an absolutely ordinary user actually cause societal chaos? To figure this out, we're going to objectively unpack some actual defense documents from a highly unique case. We're going to apply the hard laws of physics and network science directly to a courtroom setting just to see where the absolute limits of cause and effect actually lie. To really anchor us before we jump into the hard science, listen to this incredibly vivid analogy straight from the defense files. The defendant argued, "My retweet is like breathing, releasing carbon dioxide. You cannot sentence me to life in prison for global warming because I breathe." Wow, right? It's a slightly wild, but honestly, an incredibly powerful logical statement, and it perfectly frames the exact legal and scientific paradox we are about to explore. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll start with a retweet on trial, then move to the human rights defense, the illusion of order, the edge node, the science of causality, and finally, law meets digital reality. Section 1. A retweet on trial, the case of Dr. Chen Jingyuan. So, the documents outline a very specific sequence of events. Dr. Chen Jingyuan is an independent physics scholar. His social media account had fewer than 100 followers, literally barely a whisper on the massive internet. He retweeted some academic articles, artistic content, and political commentary. Yet for this completely ordinary digital activity, he was charged under the criminal code with picking quarrels and provoking trouble. The authorities claimed his actions seriously disrupted public order. And the result? A really staggering sentence of 1 year and 8 months in prison. Section 2. The Human Rights Defense. Baseline International Law. Now, the defense anchors its argument in the ICESCR, which is a major international human rights treaty. They point directly to Article 6, the right to work, arguing that, for an independent scholar, researching and sharing information literally is his work. They also bring up Article 12 regarding physical and mental health. But most importantly, they lean heavily on Article 15. This is the one that protects a citizen's right to participate in cultural life and enjoy the benefits of scientific progress. Sharing and consuming academic and artistic expression falls squarely into this protected category. The core legal defense here claims that a criminal punishment of nearly 2 years in prison for retweeting to a tiny audience entirely lacks proportionality. The documents argue that treating artistic expression and academic debate as criminal rumor-mongering contradicts the state's obligation to foster an open scientific environment. Instead, they argue it creates a severe chilling effect, essentially forcing scholars into self-censorship just out of pure fear. Section 3. The Illusion of Order. Why chaos is a feature, not a bug. To build their scientific argument, the defense brings in something called the CAP theorem, formulated by computer scientist Eric Brewer. The CAP theorem states that in any distributed network, like, say, a massive global social media platform, you have consistency, availability, and partition tolerance. But the hard rule of physics here is that you can only ever have 2 of those at the same time. Because a global network absolutely must stay online and it has to tolerate network partitions, it literally has to sacrifice perfect consistency. And think about what that means. If perfect consistency is impossible, then a global social network is inherently, by definition, disordered. Have you ever refreshed your feed and it briefly breaks, or maybe shows you posts completely out of sequence? That's the chaos. It's actually the physical baseline of the system. Therefore, the defense argues, you cannot criminally blame a single user for creating chaos in a system that is engineered by its very design to be chaotic and inconsistent. It's a fundamental category error. Section 4. The Edge Node. The Mathematics of Influence. So, we learned that social media platforms are what physicists actually call scale-free networks. According to mathematical models like Barbassi-Albert, connections on these platforms aren't distributed evenly at all. Actually, scratch that, they aren't even close to even. They follow a power law, meaning influence is incredibly, massively skewed. Now, what's really interesting about this is the stark contrast it creates. On one side, you have hub nodes. We're talking massive media outlets or celebrities with millions of followers. They dictate the flow of the network. On the other side, you have edge nodes, the everyday users. Dr. Chen, with his tiny following, is the ultimate edge node. In a scale-free network, edge nodes are structurally invisible. Their individual actions simply do not possess the kinetic energy to alter the macrostructure of the system. Section 5. The science of causality. Physics versus legal charges. Enter the concept of network robustness. Network science proves that scale-free networks are incredibly resilient to random, small-scale disruptions out at the edges. Because the network's skeleton is held together by those massive hubs we just talked about, you can perturb or even entirely delete millions of edge nodes, and the overall network doesn't even feel a tremor. To put a hard number on this, the defense actually cites Cohen's critical threshold. The math proves that to actually break a scale-free network through random disruptions at the edges, you essentially have to remove almost 100% of them. It's practically indestructible from the bottom up. So, looking at this mathematically, the defense argues it is physically impossible for a single, low-follower account to crash the system's macro order. The expected value of their influence basically approaches zero. Therefore, proving that Dr. Chen's retweet directly caused severe public chaos is a scientific impossibility. The prosecution's mathematical equation simply does not balance. Section 6. Law meets digital reality. The collision of two worlds. And this brilliantly illustrates the core conflict here. Our judicial systems are largely built on 18th and 19th century linear thinking, right? Action A directly causes result B. I throw a rock, the window breaks. Simple. But we now live in a digital reality governed by complex systems, where action A is just a microscopic, non-linear drop in a highly entropic ocean. The law demands a straight line of blame, while the science proves the system is a chaotic, tangled web. Ultimately, Dr. Chen's defense is a brilliant epistemological strike. They've neutrally laid out the math, proving that social networks are inherently high entropy by their very design, and edge nodes completely lack the structural power to shift them. Therefore, linear criminal causality simply cannot be proven. The defense is essentially demanding that judicial systems rely on provable system dynamics and empirical math, rather than just subjective estimations of harm. Which leaves us with this final, truly vital question. If the internet is inherently and structurally chaotic, how must our laws catch up and evolve to measure true harm? When does a microscopic digital action actually cross the line into real-world responsibility? And how do we build legal frameworks that respect the actual physics of the networks we use every single day? It is a complex future for law, science, and digital expression. And for sure, it's something we all need to keep our focus on. Thanks for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll see you next time.